Hey there! Welcome back to Reddit Dating, best channel for cheating stories. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more spicy stories. Pregnant wife cheated on me. Me, 28M, and my wife, 30F, have been married for 4.5 years and have a beautiful little girl who is 3. Last year, we bought a house which came with a massive amount of stress due to being put through hell by the solicitors we were dealing with. Documents upon documents required, information requested we had already sent, being ghosted by them until we sat on hold to them for hours waiting to speak to someone, each time telling us a different thing. It was a tough time, but at long last, we got a house we both loved and would be amazing for our little one. We tried for a second child a few months after moving in, but it just wasn't happening. My wife began to worry that we couldn't conceive a second, as the first one had been so quick after trying only a month. I had some reservations about a second child so soon after the stress of moving, and I was trying to get a better job at the time so we could be more stable. I told her this and she got really upset, thinking if we didn't try now, we would never conceive. I relented as I saw how much it meant to her, and I did want a second child, so we tried. Months rolled on until eventually she fell pregnant. It was great as she was immensely happy, but I had a nagging dread of responsibility that if I didn't get a better job soon, we would struggle with 2 children. I locked myself away for a few months participating in online courses to try and get the skills needed to move into a different career path, something we had discussed and she seemed to be on board with. We grew apart at this period since I only saw her at supper and then went upstairs to study for the courses. We grew aloof and hardly interacted. We still had, at least once a week, frequently more. 3 months later, we chat about how we've grown apart and that we're not the same. With the baby on the way, I was trying to learn and study as quickly as possible. We agreed we needed to spend more time together because things had gotten stale. We talked more after that, and she expressed her joy at working with her colleagues. She seems to focus on one man in her stories. She changes quickly. She suddenly does things she would normally do. She is always on her phone, bathes shortly after work, her legs, and lavishes on makeup and moisturizer. When I asked her about it, she said she wanted to take better care of herself and feel better about herself because she was getting bigger. I got it. Right? I thought it was fantastic she was doing these modest things that helped her feel good about herself. Other tiny things gave me the impression that things were not as they seemed. Wanting me to go upstairs early to put our daughter to bed. Even so, I didn't suspect anything and trusted her completely. One day, she asked if she can spend the night with an old school acquaintance she hasn't seen in years. That's good, I responded. It'd be excellent for her to catch up. It never occurred to me that she was having an affair with a coworker or anyone else. A week or so later, my mother-in-law visits and talks of her friend's divorce. Her buddy discovered texts from her spouse indicating an affair. My mother-in-law and I both agreed that it must be dreadful to feel the need to check our partner's phones. During this exchange, I observed a flash of dread and anxiety on my wife's face. Then it vanished and the talk went on. That's when I started adding. I didn't think she'd done anything, but something was at me. As I joined the dots, I was apprehensive. When I stepped into her room after she'd gone to bed, it felt as if I'd caught her doing something. As I arrived, she had pulled the covers up to her chin. I asked how she was, then kissed her goodnight. That was it. It was worse than I had expected when I entered into her social media accounts on my study computer using her old password. Every day for the last week, they've been emailing each other naked films. She was doing it before bedtime and I was studying thereafter. They had at work and even in our house while I was working, according to the discussions. His wife and 2 children were also shown to me. That she would never do to me, he gave her assignments every morning on what to wear, how to talk to him, and she loved it. She recommended they book a hotel away from him, claiming she was meeting up with an old school friend. Were the messages meant to be a warning? I slept close to my baby that night, while pure adrenaline flowed through me. I didn't sleep, just lay there wondering and sobbing. I didn't say anything before she left for work. It was difficult since I had nothing to say. It devastated me to see her all dolled up and joyful as she departed that morning, to face her when she returned home. When my mother-in-law came to pick up our daughter while we were both at work, I broke down and told her everything. She was sad and empathetic. My wife came home knowing she had been exposed. I vented and inquired why. Why did she do it? Was it mine? Does she adore him? Will she stay together? So many. Initially, she was silent and refused to answer my queries. She just sat there, zoning out, thinking. After ranting for a time, I asked if she could talk to me instead of just staring at the floor. She claimed they had only started becoming in the last week, which matched the communications I had kept. She said she didn't love this guy and that it was a mistake. She claimed she wasn't thinking. It was nothing to do with me and that she still loved me. I had done nothing wrong. It was just an escape from what had become a monotonous life. She blamed the hormones. She said she hadn't been well for a while. I was helpless. I went for a walk and called my distant mother. She was understanding and stated I needed to consider carefully about our daughter and unborn child. And then I went back. Despite this, I adored my wife. I wanted us to be together again before we bought the house. To save our marriage and kids, I didn't tell anyone else. She stayed with our daughter that night so I could get some rest, but it didn't help. Then I wanted her. I told her I missed her. She agreed. We had intercourse the next night, as if nothing had happened. I felt compelled to regain what had been taken from me, so I started it. We concluded we did love each other and that things would be difficult for a while. What happened when the baby was born intrigued me. I couldn't give up. I just asked her to be honest with me going forward. She returned to work and said she had transferred offices. She stated they had chatted and she had informed him her family was her priority and they couldn't go on. He asked her if she really wanted that, and she said yes. So we both went back to work, which was awful. Every day was a different mood, angry, sad, or fine. I started spending less time studying and more time with her watching TV, reading, and waking up with her to say goodbye instead of staying asleep. Because I realized this is what I wanted, not to make sure she wasn't still contacting him. Regaining normalcy, I started going to the gym, eating better, and caring for myself. We had good and awful days outing and playing with our daughter, bits and pieces. Her parents took us all to a spa, which was great. After a few weeks, I began to believe that this may work. I felt like something wonderful may come out of it all. She had to go on a business trip on a day she doesn't normally work. I stated that it was unusual and I would be concerned. She had asked a friend to watch our daughter while we were both at work. This was also odd. I conveyed my worries and inquired whether she planned to meet him again. She answered no and told me where she will be that day to relieve my concerns. Things were going well by now, despite the fact that it was still early. 3 weeks since D-Day. I dreaded being worried sick that day. I was okay. It was my first regular day at the time. I noticed how much she desired our union, how upset she was, how much better I felt in so little time. I did. On my lunch break, she called to say work had been canceled and she was going home early. I inquired if she wanted to get lunch as she would be near my workplace. No, she merely wanted to go home since her back hurt from the pregnancy, now 5 months in. Okay, I said, and went to work. When I questioned her about her day at work, she stated it was dull and uninteresting. We went to bed, but I awoke in the night. I kept pondering how unusual it was that she left that day and returned so early. To calm my mind, I checked her phone, which indicated she hadn't been where she said she had gone. I addressed her after she awoke to my tense squirming. She denied seeing him. I presented every proof, and she finally acknowledged. She said they had resolved their differences and agreed to focus on their family. She stated they had only talked about it to obtain closure. She hadn't seen him at work since D-Day, and she wanted to wrap up the case. I contended she had planned up an intricate falsehood, still lied after she realized I had worked it out, and refused to see him that day. She went to his residence, but did not enter. They got some coffee and wandered around the park for an hour or so conversing. I looked up a random eatery on my phone that wasn't near where she stated she was. I asked if they'd gone to that one. That was it, she said. A new lie. When I told her the cafe wasn't where she thought it was, she became enraged. I wasn't listening. It was all a haze. Neither do I. I'm being honest. Nada. As a final test, I told her to prove it in the morning. I feel a lot better after yesterday. You? I questioned her. As long as his response is innocuous and in accordance with what she said, it could be accurate. But if he says they had again or responds with anything nasty, the game is over. No. And I threatened to send her phone if she didn't. She shouted at me in her phone. She frantically typed on it. This was like a confession to me. I asked her why she lied about her location again, and she stated she expected me to leave if I found out. I haven't slept in 36 hours. We decided she would spend the night at her mother's. A loss. There's more, but I've been typing. I can't believe she's pregnant with my child. I'm 99.9% sure and still dating this guy. I'm a mess.